right, great. Thanks for joining everyone, and yeah, coming back from the break. My name's Emily. I'm the Senior Sales Director at Tubular. And yeah, I'm going to spend the next 50 minutes or so talking through our latest trends and insights in the Nordics when it comes to the social platforms. So I'm going to talk a little bit around what we're seeing in terms of content opportunities. We're actually going to then kind of dive into different audience segments and talk about how they're changing their consumption behavior on the platforms. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit around branded content spend and what's happening there. But yeah, I think, before I jump into that, it's important you guys know a little bit about who we are and why we're qualified to talk about these things. So for those of you that have never heard of Tubular before, we were actually founded as a business, it was around 6 years ago now, and our two co-founders, Rob and Alison, Alison came from YouTube, Rob came from Netflix, and they built the business at a time where you had tons of audiences migrating to the online platforms without any real tech or measurement solution to help both brands and media companies navigate that space. So we really wanted to demystify what was happening on social and very much act as like a Nielsen or a Comscore. So how do we do that today? We've built out this massive database which looks at all video content across YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch. And so we're trying to standardize the way we're providing insights across these platforms. Essentially we pull in from the API all public data globally. So our market data is just as strong in Finland as Japan, as the US. And we're looking at 5 billion videos, 40 million creators, whether that's influencers, brands, aggregators, media companies. And so that scale's really important for people to get that bigger picture of what's going on, which we'll look at in a moment. And then we've also invested heavily in audience insight. So, can we help people understand their audience at a much deeper level on these platforms? We have, so it's over 200 clients globally, and that will be anyone from the likes of actually YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, MCNs such as Splay One, and then brands like, Adidas, Red Bull, Lego. I think that the use case varies massively depending on the type of company. So Red Bull, they feed our data into their global influencer program to make them much more scientific on who they partner with and how they qualify the right partner. Whereas Lego, while they might do a bit of kidfluencer marketing, it's really looking at their YouTube channels they build. How does that impact point of sale? And so they use our data to a lot of modeling out in terms of the direct revenue uplift from their YouTube channels. So now you kind of know a bit about who we are. I'll kind of come on to talk around trends we've seen in the last couple of years. So I think, the first thing, like looking at more of a global perspective, is we've seen definitely the rise of a lot of new formats. So whether that was stories last year that kind of kicked off very successfully, or IGTV that got off to a very slow start, but then started to pick up towards the back end of the year. So that's been one thing. You've then had the resurgence of live content. So you can see, the KSI and Paul Logan fight. I'm sure a lot of you either heard about that or actually watched it. It was actually the most streamed non-professional sports match on YouTube ever. So massively successful, and we'll look at in a moment how younger people are starting to consume more and more sports content on YouTube now. To then, micro-influencers. So you've got kind of Blue the pig page there. So that's becoming really popular, both in terms of like brands wanting to work with these smaller, really engaged channels, but also the number of channels you now have access to that are kind of cropping up in almost every different vertical and space. And then, you can see also Fortnite up there. So Fortnite has really been, it's like taken over online video in the last couple of years. It's still massive right now. And it seems to have gone very mass market. So you had things like the Fortnite Dance Challenge that just like was a viral sensation. And so as a topic, by the end of last year, it had over 40 billion views globally, which meant there was more viewership for Fortnite content than there was for all travel content across the platforms. So it really shows the power of these trends when they do take off, and you are able to get that kind of momentum from users online. But yeah, bringing it a bit closer to home, so that's kind of talking a bit more around what's happening globally. I thought I'd share the data we have right here in the Nordics. And so last year, yeah, we saw definitely another year of growth on YouTube in these markets. The average growth across all of the countries was around 20% year on year. So that was very similar to what we saw in the US and the rest of Europe. And then looking kind of by individual market, so it was actually Norway and Iceland that were driving the fastest growth, so over 30% year on year. But what we always try and do is then dig into these numbers and say, okay, we know, where that growth is coming from, but who's really consuming this content? And so, yeah, Sweden, you can see there, I think they were getting like 24 billion views on YouTube last year. They're actually, around 46% of Swedish content that's uploaded is consumed by a local audience, but they are exporting the most content to the US of any market. Whereas very interestingly for Finland, of all the markets, you're consuming more content locally than the others. So yeah, that's kind of one thing. The other area we research, so we've classified all creators by the type of publisher they are, so whether it is an influencer, a brand, or a media company. And so the other part of this research is we wanted to understand who was supplying this content. And as you'd expect with a platform like YouTube, influencers are normally kind of representing the largest share of viewership and uploads, but that was really heavily skewed in their favor in Finland. So yeah, over 90% of content that's uploaded comes from influencers. And where we've seen in the rest of Europe, for the first time ever last year, we had media companies and brands start capturing a larger share of viewership, having faster growth relative to influencers. So although they still represent a smaller amount, they are growing quicker and they're really going after audiences very proactively. So in Finland right now, that's not really happening. And I think, yeah, there is a big opportunity. If you feel your audience is on YouTube and you want to get through to them, try and speak to them directly, or at the very least, do more with top creators on that platform. Great, and then yeah, this kind of shows some of those top categories, which we'll look at in a bit more detail in a moment. But yeah, top categories that influencers in Finland are producing content on. All right, so yeah, I'm now going to talk a bit more specifically to the video trends we've seen and looking at that by each of the markets. And so yeah, the first one here we've got is YouTube, and you can see the top performing categories right at the top there, so gaming, kids entertainment, music and dance. And then that second graph below, it's actually trying to help you understand more the virality of content. So we're looking at what's the average viewership content within that category gets after the month mark. And yeah, as I think a lot of people would expect, we know kids content is on the rise. That's very popular on YouTube. So 800% year-on-year growth is exponentially large. But what I find even more interesting is that V30 number, so that average viewership kids content gets after a month, being close to 800,000. That's one of the highest globally. So it just shows that there's so much appetite, for young people when that's being uploaded for them to consume that immediately. And we would normally expect that growth to continue overall for viewership as a result. Then looking for Facebook. So yeah, here, we see entertainment sort of skewing that and being one of the largest categories that people go to consume content on Facebook for. But you also have people on blogs, food and drinks, film and movies content doing very well. And then the majority of growth coming from gaming content, which is interesting. So yeah, although people, I think YouTube's like the flagship platform for gaming, we are seeing that growth now in other areas and other social platforms. Great, and then on Instagram, so actually, yeah, you can see entertainment's also very high, but people and blogs is much higher and represents a larger category relative to Facebook there. But here we're seeing, so science and tech. So if you're a tech company in this space, Instagram's probably a great place for you to start distributing, but also animation content. So some of that kids content, those creators are also on Instagram and seeing growth there. So then one of the biggest questions we're always asked by our clients is, right, can you tell me though, for a particular segment, like what do they care about, or is their behavior different on social? So as part of this, we really wanted to dig deep into what millennials are consuming in the Nordics versus what Gen Z, so anyone between 7 to 24 are watching. And this shows that breakdown, so we can see for both age groups, the entertainment, people on blogs, and gaming are like the strongest, most dominant categories. But when it comes to Gen Y, it's very much skewed, so they're much more likely to be looking at entertainment, people on blogs content, beauty, science and tech. You'll see in a moment home and sort of improvement, DIY content's also very popular with them. Whereas Gen Z, they're now seeing YouTube as one of the key platforms for them to engage in sports content and gaming content. So yeah, they're 2.9 times more likely to watch sports content on YouTube than millennials or their older siblings, which I think is like really fascinating because these platforms are still growing, they're still changing and adapting. But it's going to be, when we see the rise of Gen Z watching content there, it'll be interesting to know how they affect these industries going forward, particularly sports. And then, kind of looking at this from more of a topic level. So, no surprise, eSports is one of the key drivers behind the growth in gaming content, but also Battlefield content's doing really well. Whereas for millennials, so they're actually using YouTube partly to go back to these almost like nostalgic things. So looking at Pixar videos or Finding Dory, and also to go and consume more creative content. So like art videos around surrealism saw a lot of growth. Home and DIY videos which looked at the small house movement some of you might have seen, or architectural digest content. So if you're a brand operating in that space, that's definitely an opportunity for you to kind of jump on that or look into that. All right, so I'm now going to talk a little bit through branded content spend and how that's changing on social. And some of the background here is we've been measuring out the relationship between all brands and then influencers and media companies on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So the idea is, again, where we're trying to demystify what's happening on social, we really want to empower agencies and brands to improve their planning and ultimately those partnership decisions and spend. But I guess kind of looking at it from a global perspective, we now see branded content across the platforms is the estimated value is over 2 billion, and it is increasing, significantly. But first, starting with Instagram, so we can see the top industries on the left, so those are brand industries. That's the right. So that's personal care, electronics, food brands, finance, and insurance. And then the top genres are actually creators producing people and blog content, entertainment, but also music and dance and sports. And then here is a quick summary of some of those top sponsors, as well as the top partners in Finland on Instagram. Whereas, if we look at Facebook, top industries, again, personal care and health, they're really present, doing a lot of these campaigns on both the platforms, but also retail, finance, food, and then telecom, and interestingly, education at the bottom there. And some of those top genres, so entertainment, sports is actually doing, sports publishers are doing much more on Facebook than Instagram in Finland. And then also there's film and movies and home and DIY publishers. And again here, you get to see some of those top sponsors that have worked then with Finnish content creators, recently. All right, so that kind of takes us to some of the key takeaways from when we've pulled this research. And I think that the first thing is, social video is still going through major growth. So as I kind of mentioned on the formats piece, like we expect there to be lots of changes happening to all of the platforms, whether that's on the algorithm side or even new platforms being discovered and gaining momentum and traction very quickly. So really for our clients, they need to be, or for anyone that cares about having a presence on these platforms, you need to be very agile and adapt sort of accordingly, which is of course really challenging. And you need new expertise all the time. But I think that one of the key ways you can manage that challenge is by informing yourself and informing your teams. So very much taking a data-led approach. What we found now with interviewing and speaking to a lot of our customers, they try and almost have an 80-20 rule where 80% of the time when it comes to creating content or building a presence with their audience, they're informing that decision with data, and 20% of the time they're using more creative intuition or they're like creative expertise. And then the kind of final point there, so I think at the start I touched on how we're very much trying to bring measurement standards to market. What we've heard on both sides, so from the brands as well as from the media companies, is that the industry right now is kind of being held back from a lack of that insight. And one thing we've done to try and address that is launch dedupe viewership and watch time for the first time on social. But also, people in this room definitely need to come together and think, right, in this new ecosystem, what do we really want? What do we need to kind of grow and feel comfortable investing in these platforms? Because we know audiences are there, but it's not always clear how to navigate that or get through to them. Great, so that's kind of all we've got time for, I think. But I'm going to be here today, so rest of the afternoon if you have any questions or you're interested in social video. I'm sure I'll be over by one of the hangout areas.